Let's bring in Dan Ives, Global Head of Technology Research at Wedbush. Dan, you've been listening into the president's press conference, and I'm wondering, as an analyst who covers a lot of these names, at what point do you start actually modeling in? Do you wait until there are contracts, or do you acknowledge that there is some sort of expectation and therefore you get excited alongside? You know, we saw the stock react in the late afternoon.
Yeah, look, Melissa, I think it's something you're going to have to start to model in. I mean, not just for names like Oracle, but especially when it comes to any of these sort of data center innovation plays, the Palantirs, Microsoft, and others. And I think now it's a question of the multiplier effect and how quick this is going to happen. But we're seeing this off to a fast start, and everything we're seeing in the Beltway, this is going to be just really, really positive for more of the data center players, from Microsoft, for Amazon, for Google, and of course for Oracle.
Hey, Dan, it's Dan. You know, when you think about some of these numbers being thrown around, there's no specifics here. You know, Microsoft gave some CapEx guidance, I want to say a few weeks ago. They kind of guided to maybe $80 billion in the next year or so. 40 of that was going to be overseas. Don't you get to a point where you can only build so much data center infrastructure here in the U.S., especially for these big multinationals who have to serve other places around the world? And the last part of this question is, and what about power consumption? Like, some point, there's only so much data centers you can build in the near term because you are power constrained.
Yeah, Dan, I mean, you hit on a great point, because the reality is we could talk about these CapEx numbers, but it's about you need the grid, you need the energy, and we could talk about nuclear and other names like ACO and, you know, and others. But if you look on the data center side, I mean, there's essentially going to be more data centers under construction than actual data centers. But now, how quickly that gets built, and especially when we'll see it in earnings, but for Microsoft, for Amazon, for Google, the CapEx is there. But now it's about monetizing and how quick. That's what the street's going to be focused on for the next 2, 3, 4 quarters.
Dan, it's Tim. So let's do that then. So let's act like today didn't happen. As you were looking at the universe of getting exposure to AI across, you know, a number of different, let's call it just ancillary industries, but or straight out of Broadcom, or straight out of, you know, some part of the legacy players we know about. Where are you coming into today before this news?
Look, Tim, I think you're looking at not just Broadcom, but what I believe is sort of the second, third derivatives. I think this is bullish for software. I think when you look at names like Salesforce.com, Mongo, of course, names like Palantir and others, because as the data centers get built, it's skating to where the puck's going. Where are the use cases? That's really what the key is going to be over the, call it, next 2, 3, 4 quarters. And I think it's really, this is bullish for software, because data centers, they get built out, the use cases are going to be software driven.
But the use cases aren't clear right now. I mean, are we going to be at a point where we have the data centers in place, but the use cases, that part of the equation hasn't exactly caught up?
Yeah, I think right now it's starting to catch. I mean, I think we saw it with Benioff and Salesforce. We've seen it with ServiceNow, Palantir, and now the use cases are really going to start to explode, because these companies, when you talk about all the AI CapEx, it's about the multiplier. For every dollar spent on an NVIDIA chip, there's an $8 to $10 multiplier across the rest of tech. That's bullish for all these data center players, bullish for software, and that's going to really be the focus going into earnings season in terms of playing out these sort of next derivatives of AI.
Yeah, Dan, I went sort of AI adjacent. I looked at Dell, and I'm like, you know what? On the margins, it's got to be good for that stock, especially given the fact that it has sold off significantly since that huge move we saw, I think it was the fall of last year.
Yeah, I think Dell has gotten overly hit. And I think when you think about ones that are going to play, of course, it's Oracle, but names like Dell, you could argue names like Cisco and others are going to be beneficiaries here, because what you're seeing over the last 24 hours from Trump, I mean, it's a green light from an innovation perspective. And that's not just going to be some of the data center players, it's all the U.S. tech players. I mean, everyone's going to try to get in on this, you know, massive spending wave. This is just the beginning, and I think Dell clearly will be a beneficiary there.